Okay, this is it. This is it. I just got the word from the doctor. He said call him. He got back my MRI scans.
This is Casey Neistat, and unless you've been living under a rock for the past decade or so, you'll know Casey is probably one of the biggest content creators on YouTube. Today, we're going to take a look at his editing style for one of his vlogs, break it down, and see what we can learn from it. Welcome to Cut for Cut. Hi, I'm Stu, and welcome to a new occasional series that I call Cut for Cut. What we're going to do in this video is to take a look at filmmakers and editors and just do a deep dive on how they go about editing and constructing their videos. The Casey's a really good example of how things changed in the vlogging sphere around about 2015. Before Casey, everybody just literally went about their day shooting different clips of what they were doing that day, cutting them up and whacking them up on YouTube. What Casey did though was Casey brought the aesthetics and the techniques of the film industry and brought it down to YouTube level. He's since been copied thousands upon thousands of times, but I pretty much guarantee you there's very few people who have actually studied his editing style to learn the beats of what he does. And I've just made a carbon copy of things like his time lapses. So what I've got is one of his vlogs, and I've cut it up, as you can see here, and I've coloured it so that you can see the major beats of the video. We've got red for the main story, a light blue, which is for the subplot or the B story, and you can see that going right to the way end here, and then other colours for other segments that he's put in the video to make up the vlog. So let's break it down shot for shot and look at how he actually puts together a story of the day. Of all the things that Casey has brought to vlogging on YouTube, it's probably the use of the 3-act structure. Now, Casey's been very transparent about how he films his videos, and if you know where to look, he has dotted tips and techniques throughout his different vlogs over the years. So let's take a look at 3-act structure first of all, because it's the backbone of how Casey likes to tell a story. The 3-act structure divides a story up into 3 main sections, each containing their own particular plot points to help drive the story forward. Act 1 usually contains the setup, or the introduction to everything that's going on, the characters, that kind of thing. Act 2 is where the action rises up and you get any kind of confrontation or things going wrong. Then Act 3 is the sort of peak of action and the resolution of everything, which wraps up the story. This is something Casey does on a regular basis, so let me show you. Just to give a little bit of context, in the previous vlog, Casey had been complaining of a knee injury, and if you know Casey Neistat, you know running is a huge part of his life, and he'd gone and got an MRI scanned, and this is basically the results of that scan. So let's play.
Hey, this is it. This is it. I just got the word from the doctor. He said call him. He got back my MRI scans. Actually, he emailed me earlier about it, but I wanted to make sure I could record it, so I've been putting off this call for a few hours now.
Hi, this is the doctor. Please leave me a message.
Damn it. In voicemail.
So there we go. What we've got there is the first part of a 3-act structure. The setup is he's waiting for his MRI scan results, and we've already got a little bit of a plot point in terms of can't get through to his doctor. So there's a little bit of drama, crisis going on in earlier parts of Act 1. And within a particular scene, you can actually break scenes down into specific Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 if you want to. But for Casey, he's kept it relatively straightforward and he's got me engaged because telling me what he's looking for and why he isn't getting it, because it's an answer message, and then we move on to the next clip. And you notice at this point the music builds up, and he's also doing another trope, which is a kind of flashback effect. And this is a kind of Tarantino-esque thing whereby Tarantino doesn't like to use the traditional 3-act structure and uses a more of a non-linear scripting setup. Casey's jumping from the 3-act structure into a more non-linear by going back to an earlier point in his video. I'm just going to pause here and point out that Casey tends to use these time-lapse videos to segue to the next part of the video that you're actually watching. So you'll see throughout this video different time-lapses at different times of day to basically push the story forward and say, I'm going from this point to this point and I'm using a time-lapse to get you there.
Out on a morning run. I should hear back from the doctor today to find out if my running career is over or not.
There's a few things going on here that you may or may not have noticed. If I just rewind it a little bit, he's giving his exposition, which is 6 or maybe 7 hours early. And then you've got his traditional time-lapse effect, which then cuts to him running towards camera. And here's the interesting thing. Watch once he makes the jump. Jump's been made. Well then, on to the next cut. And as you'll see as I've marked here, this is called a Texas switch. Let me show you a cool example.
Cut through there. Come on. Through the gardens. What's the matter, Danny? You never taken a shortcut before?
This is the essence of a Texas switch, whereby the actor does one part of the sequence and then is replaced by a stunt double who's hiding behind, in this case, the fence, or multiple stunt doubles, as you'll see here, which is done for comedic effect. And then you're onto a completely different scene. This isn't the same scene. There's a cut here and then he appears. But see, if you actually look at the sky, you'll notice the clouds jump back the way. Whereas in the time lapse, the clouds are kind of getting pushed out the way. So he shot this at different points. And Casey does this all himself. So we play it through. Time lapse, running towards the camera, ducks down. Different cut.
Out on a morning run. I should hear back from the doctor today to find out if
So again, he's doing exposition and explaining what he's looking to get from his doctor later on in the day.
my running
And he's reinforcing the fact that his running career is important to him. And also, he's taking us to a different point in time, and it's part of the same narrative, but obviously he's in a completely different location. I'd probably guess it's part of Central Park or something in Manhattan.
to find out if my running career is over or not.
Another thing I should point out is he's probably filming this with his iPhone, and he is more concerned with getting the story out to you guys than he is about the aesthetics of the image. So you can see from the shot here that I've paused, the sky is very blown out, his face is exposed properly, but you've lost all detail in the corner of the hat and also the clouds behind. Because as far as Casey's concerned, story is king, and the information he's imparting to you is more important than getting the actual scene perfect.
I realize I probably shouldn't be running right now, but it's a little bit like the final moments of the Titanic. Just because you know the ship is sinking doesn't mean you shouldn't enjoy the last song by the string quartet.
Now what we're going to move on to is a first of, I think, 2 or 3 pop culture references. Now the cool thing about pop culture references, if I play this one first, we've got a scene from the 90s movie The Titanic. And obviously the band that kept playing. He's doing 2 things here. He is involving you in the video, which is a clever thing to do because you probably watched Titanic and you know the scene, and that subconsciously lets you connect with the video. And also he's using an L cut by continuing the audio from the Titanic scene into his next clip. You see his keyboard coming forward, Casey appearing, so you've got a jump cut going on there. And then
Deadlines. When you have to finish something by a certain time.
So what we're onto now is the B story, which is basically, rather than just having one linear story throughout the video, he's introducing a secondary, less important but still important enough B story, which he's going to work his way through as well. So we've now got the A story, which is in red, and the B story, which is in light blue.
Or there are consequences. Now, I'm not a big fan of deadlines. In fact, I hate them.
The other thing that he's doing is he was well known for riding a boosted board through Manhattan without a helmet, and then I think his wife Candace basically got on at him to wear a helmet and be a bit more sort of safety conscious. But he's putting the helmet on. Now that again is setting up another part of the video later on, which is in green, which is him basically adding lights to the helmet. So it's introducing that point at this stage as well. So there's now a C story going on here as well.
I really only operate well when I have a deadline.
Now, I want to point this out as well, hence the arrow. This is a happy accident, but remember this guy with the suitcase and the white baseball cap. We'll come back to him later on. Casey keeps us, the audience, engaged by dividing up his exposition of what's going on and using different scenes in different parts of his day. I mean, he's obviously been to some kind of meeting here and he's, you know, we don't see that part of it, but we obviously see him talking to camera, and then we get another time-lapse segue, which if I run, hyperlapse back to the office. Again, slows down, gets to the door, and he's into his building, and it's just a fast cut straight into his iconic studio.
I have a deadline today, and it's a pretty serious deadline.
So at this point, I'm going to go back to the A story. So we've had a couple of different sequences going on that has reinforced the A story, but this is us now going back to it. Again, just keep you engaged with what's going on in the video.
Nervous about this call, because whatever he says, because it's like it's already for the most part, it's out of my control. I'm happy to adjust my lifestyle, but it's like the damage is, let's see what he has to say. Hi, this is Casey Neistat for Doctor. Did I speak? Yeah. All right. Couldn't reach him. All right. Yes, to be continued.
Now this bit I found interesting as well. He has filmed this little sequence whereby the phone is just in front of the camera. You're seeing the reflection, and again, this is another subtle Texas switch because he places his camera down, he goes off to camera right, his left, but then he reappears from this side, camera left, on his right. And that again just keeps you engaged because you're not expecting that. So it's a kind of subtle Texas switch this time.
Yes, to be continued.
There he goes off. Cut straight to the phone. And then he throws it back down. So that's a kind of signal of frustration. He's frustrated that he can't get hold of his doctor. And we're then on to another bit. Building music. Cut. Because now we've got the doctor phoning him.
Doctor, it's Casey.
Hey, Casey, all right. So, listen, I'll tell you briefly. But basically, what I see on the MRI is two things. Thing number one, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, great. Thing number one, you have something called a plica. It's a piece of tissue that connects underneath.
Now he pops up a piece of exposition onto the screen saying that he's edited down the conversation for brevity, and also, I could be wrong here, but I think he has reenacted a couple of little bits and pieces, the camera and reaction wise, and he's playing over the audio of the call as well. Could be wrong, but I think there's just a couple of bits in here.
And it connects also to your IT band, and it pulls your kneecap out of alignment, and it causes cartilaginous like wear and tear. Just to kind of fast forward, you can run, and you can even run now. I'm not worried. You don't have anything wrong with your bones. The cartilage is normal, except for like a little normal wear and tear.
And it cuts.
An orthopedic surgical consult.
This makes me think, just because of the audio and the way it's been recorded and the distances away from his microphone, there's not enough of a drop off in the audio. So I think this is being staged. But again, I could be wrong. You might have filmed it live.
So you're telling me I'm going to be able to run? Wait.
I'm telling you that you're able to run.
Well, this is fantastic news. I'm good.
So there's nothing wrong with doing that, and it's just him taking control of the narrative and making sense of what the doctor's basically said to him. So if we just take it back a few steps,
News.
we're then going to go into another pop culture
I'm
reference.
good.
This time, and he uses a J cut and then an L cut to introduce the music and then fade out to this point.
I'm good. Nothing permanent. Sorry, my sister. Sorry, Jordan.
And he then picks up the camera, and this is a classic Casey thing whereby he engages a lot closer to the camera with you guys and keeps you involved by adding a little bit of motion. It's almost like an in-camera transition, subtle but there.
Jordan, sorry, your shit's all fucked up, Jordan, and I'm not fucked up, and I'm not fucked up. I'm good, and I'm still running. Yeah. Okay, so I'm.
Now we're on to another part of the story, and this is the B story that becomes more prominent. We'll come back to the A story slightly towards the end, but that's all the peak of the action of the main story out of the way now. Now, just before I let this roll, I should say that girl who is in the corner that you'll reference in a second is a brilliant actor, writer, director, producer, and editor called Anne Lupo, and it's quite interesting that he was doing a project with her because not long after that she released her own, I think, first main feature, and it went down well. I think she's actually quite cool, and you should Google her, so just be aware of that.
Okay, so I'm good. This is a huge deal. I can still run. The doctor thinks that there's like a lot of stuff going on down there, but nothing that can't be fixed. There's nothing permanent, but the point is it's good. He said I can run. And Lupo, you're like, no, you're good. I just felt like I should have acknowledged you. You know, this is a good.
Now, I found it quite interesting there that he went back to the pop culture reference of Rocky, because I just don't think he needed it. I mean, he's already changed his scene. He's another part of the studio. He's talking to camera once again. So his camera's on his filming desk where he does his animations. He references Anne, and for some reason we go back to this pop culture reference.
You know, this is a good pivot. I started this episode talking about procrastination. No, deadlines. And I talked about how I really only function well when I have a tight deadline. Same. Obviously. I've had a video.
I think anyone that's creative functions better when they've got a tight deadline. He just gets that adrenaline going and you just get things done. I know I do.
A really long time. The video that I made for YouTube called Do What You Can't. Do What You Can't. I had a part 2 to that, and the idea behind it is like, to celebrate the fact that anyone and everyone can be a filmmaker. Now, because of technology and like our phones and YouTube, anyone can be a creator, and I want to make a...
This is so very true.
That speaks to that. A much better editor than I am. We're working on this movie together.
That's quite a humble thing, because Casey's actually a really, really good editor, and he puts together videos, and when he does put together videos, he doesn't do them quite as often since he moved to California, but they're slickly done and they're very well edited together. We're now going on to the helmet once again that you introduced earlier on in the video, and this becomes a whole separate thing that we'll talk about. This takes us to this shorter sequence about putting a light on his helmet, and he does a crashing montage, I think is maybe the best term for it, and I'll show you an example in a second. You can see if we just play it through a wee bit. So this is very much cutting to the beat of the music, and it's a lot of little short jump cuts into the sequence. Another filmmaker that's well known, I should say, for doing this is Edgar Wright. So once again, I'm going to lean on his filmmaking style, and we're going to look at a scene from Shaun of the Dead. Wright is by no means the first filmmaker to use crash zooms and this kind of fast cut montage sequence, but it's certainly one of his signature pieces, along with using things like pop culture references and comedic violence and things like that.
You do know the front door was open again last night. I'm not saying it was you.
Both sequences have slightly different pacing, but they pretty much do the same thing, which is get you to point A to point B, chucking a load of information at you, and a nice sort of fast pace with good music that just keeps the whole thing going along and carrying the story forward. And this then segues once again into another part of the studio and another cut. So let's watch that.
That's not blood, it's paint. This is like for an animation for the movie that we're still working on. We're like 15 hours away from deadline. It's coming along, but it's coming along slowly. She is far more confident than I am, which is good because she's the one in the driver's seat.
Now, did you catch that there? If I go back a little bit to around about here. That little I would have cut that out because there's still enough time and you could just run the video to get over the point that they've got a deadline and they're running out of time effectively. And then we'll
from
just
deadline,
let that play through.
it's coming along, but it's coming along slowly. She is far
And
more
this then
confident
takes us
than I
onto our
am,
final
which is
segue,
good because she's the
time
one in the
lapse.
driver's seat.
Which tells you it's night time and the day has moved forward even further. We then have once again a fast cut sequence. All the lights going off in the studio. Which is really nicely done. And out the door. And at this point I will stop, and this takes us to the final sort of round up, wrap up, finish it all, wrap it in a nice bow part of the video, which references the MRI scan and the knee. Now remember I said to you to look out for the guy with the baseball cap? Well, you're not going to exactly see the same guy, but just watch this next sequence.
Bye, Ann. Good luck tonight. I gotta say, I'm really, really happy that the running thing turned out okay. I know that seemed like the best case scenario just worked out, but it did, and I'm thankful, but it was a big deal for me. We're probably gonna make our deadline, and good news on the running.
Love that. He just so happened to capture yet another person with a white baseball cap walking camera left to camera right. Now, it's not a big deal, but it's a really nice bookend to the whole video. And I reckon Casey noticed this, and that's why this little tiny sequence is in here. For those who spot it, they get it, but otherwise, it's just a sort of throwaway thing. And then again, if we just play it through, there's the guy before, and there he is again. Not exactly the same guy, but a person walking left to right with a baseball cap on. So what did we take away from this? Well, Casey set the bar high when it came to vlogging from sort of 2015 onwards to when he moved to California. He doesn't upload as often as he used to, but when he does, it's a cool video. You know, it's something I like to watch. Casey really set the bar high back in 2015, and he continues to this day to produce short little movies, little vignettes of his life now in LA, which was obviously New York prior to that. He's been able to learn from the likes of his big brother, Van Neistat, through to Max and the Safdie brothers and all these different YouTubers and filmmakers, and he's brought all of these techniques down to his particular filmmaking style. which at this stage is heavily parodied, copied, emulated, whatever you want to call it, to this day. It's certainly calmed down a little bit since he's been posting less, but you can still see in a lot of videos the influence that Casey's had on YouTube as a whole. When it comes to filming, he's obviously thinking about his edit while he's filming. You're probably not getting to see a huge amount of what he actually shoots in a day, but he knows the key beats of the day, what's going to be important to him and what he's going to put into his edit. He easily uses a main story and then a subplot, again, to keep you engaged. His choice of music is just A1. Combine that with the 3-act structure, time lapses, the animations that he sometimes puts into his videos, the overhead shots, the iconic studio that he has. All of these things just bring each video together in a cohesive manner that is Casey Neistat. There's lots you can learn from actually breaking down his videos, and I would certainly recommend you watch his videos, download them and recut them and see how he actually puts together a video, whether he's using a jump cut, a J cut, an L cut, a match cut to tell his story. And Casey is a master storyteller, and that's what makes a good YouTuber effectively. There we go. This is the first of many deep dives that I'll be doing, looking at YouTubers, filmmakers, and specific scenes even from films, and learning how they're being edited. And obviously I'm using LumaFusion for my editing. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Hope you've maybe learned one or two things. Don't forget to like, subscribe, all those good YouTube things, ring the bell and all that, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye now.